biggest mistake I made when I first got serious about lifting, for some context, I was about 190 pounds, seriously overweight for my size. I'm 5'5", so 5'5", 190. That's a big boy right there. Thought I had some muscle though, and I had this idea in my head that if I just cut down, if I just got lean enough, I'd look incredible. I genuinely thought I had all of this muscle hiding underneath, and I just need to strip away the body fat to reveal it. So I started eating like 1,800 calories a day, which looking back is absolutely ridiculous. Training 6, sometimes 7 times a week, doing tons of cardio. Absolutely convinced that in a few months I'd be shredded and I would look sick. And you know what happened? I got down to about 135 pounds and I looked absolutely terrible. I remember standing in front of a mirror thinking, where's all this muscle? Because I thought it would just be there, you know? I thought if I just lost enough fat, there'd be this crazy physique underneath just waiting to be revealed. But the reality is, and this is something I genuinely wish someone had told me years ago, if you don't have enough muscle tissue, you're not going to look shredded. You're going to look probably pretty skinny. You'll just be a smaller, slightly more depleted version of yourself. And that was me. I looked like I didn't even lift despite thinking I was doing all the quote unquote right things for like 6+ months. But I felt like absolute crap all the time. I was tired, irritable, hungry, weak, and worst of all, I wasted about 6 months of my life chasing this fantasy of being lean, chasing that image I thought I'd look like in my head when I didn't have enough muscle to look like that in the first place. So if you're watching this right now and you're in that same position I was, or if you're skinny fat and you're stuck in this cycle, bulking for 6 weeks, then cutting for a bit because you're scared of getting fat, then right back to bulking because you realize you don't have enough muscle and the cycle continues. I'm telling you from experience and working with dozens of clients, you don't deserve to be lean yet. What you actually need to do is bulk. Properly bulk, build some actual muscle tissue, and then in 6 to 12 months, you can think about cutting. And if you're in your first year, maybe even your first 2 years of proper training, proper nutrition, and you're on a cut right now, unless you're a genetic outlier who was jacked out the womb, you don't deserve to be lean yet. Now, yes, if you're above 20% body fat, get down to at least 13, 15%, but don't try to get shredded. You haven't built the foundation of muscle that will allow you to look how you want to look lean, because the amount of muscle you carry will be the rate limiting factor on the condition you can get into. Not to mention, if you're skinny fat, 99% of the time, you don't have necessarily a body fat issue, you have a lack of muscle issue. So how exactly do we actually build muscle while minimizing fat gain and execute a proper bulk? Step 1, eat for growth. Now we need to be in a surplus, but that doesn't mean you need to eat everything in sight. You hear the word bulk and it's like a free pass to just eat whatever you want, start going out for pizza, McDonald's for lunch, McDonald's for breakfast, which is what I did my first bulk. I used to order like pancakes for breakfast and use the excuse I'm bulking as if that justifies eating absolute garbage. But what we actually want to do is get in a small surplus, about 5 to 10% above maintenance. That is very little, and that is all we need. Not some massive surplus where you're gaining a pound a week and wonder why you're just getting fat. Because eating more doesn't mean you're going to build more muscle. You have a certain amount of muscle you can build. Eating in excess of a surplus, you're still going to build that same amount of muscle, but that muscle is just going to be accompanied by an unnecessary amount of body fat that is not needed to be put on. So the rate of gain we're looking for, which is how much weight we want to be gaining each week, is about 0.25 to 0.5% of your body weight per week. So I'll take the example, if you're 160 pounds, that is only about 0.4 to 0.8 pounds per week. Maybe a bit more at the very start because of water weight and glycogen, that's normal, but that's the range you're aiming for once things stabilize. So this very small surplus will allow you to maximize your muscle growth outcomes while minimizing fat gain. And if you're really meticulous and you track things very accurately and you're on point, you'll be surprised how much muscle you can put on with very little body fat alongside. And in terms of your macros, just to quickly cover those, we want protein around 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. We want fats around 0.3 to 0.5 grams per pound, just for hormonal health. And this is important. I wouldn't go too low on fats thinking you're going to stay leaner because your hormone production will tank, your mood will suffer, you'll feel like crap. So keep fats in that range, but you don't need to go crazy high fats either, because above that 0.3 to 0.5 grams per pound, they don't really serve any additional purpose. And they're also the easiest macro to be converted into body fat. And then the rest of your calories, you fill them with carbs, and please run up your carbohydrates. They are king for performance and muscle growth. Do not be scared of them. They fuel your training, they help with recovery, they support muscle growth. Like I said, I see way too many people trying to bulk on low carb diets and wondering why they feel like they're at 50% in the gym and aren't making progress. It's because you're not fueling properly. Carbohydrates are your best friend. Then, of course, track your food. There's different approaches out there, but in my opinion, Guessing simply does not work, especially if you're someone who wants to maximize your bulk. You will not be able to make the best progress, build the most muscle, and minimize fat gain if you are not diligently tracking your food intake. Step 2, effective training. Now, honestly, this should be step 1 because even if you're eating in a perfect surplus, if your training is garbage, you're just going to get fat. The food doesn't magically turn into muscle. Training is what provides the signal. Food provides those raw materials, and both need to be there. You can't just eat your way to muscle growth. Take someone who has a terrible diet. If their training is on point, they will build muscle. Take someone with a fantastic diet. If your training is not effective and all over the place, you will build less muscle than the person with a garbage diet and good training. So training is paramount. So absolutely, you must log your lifts. Every single session, weight, reps, sets, use an app or a notebook and then track it. Because if you're not tracking, you're guessing, and guessing doesn't lead to progressive overload. And we need to be applying progressive overload session to session. And my favorite way to do this is using what's called the double progression model. So you have your rep range for each working set. Let's say 5 to 10 reps. You pick a weight you think you can do that will land you somewhere in that rep range. Then every single week, you try to beat the reps until you reach the top of the rep range. Once you reach the top, so in this case 10 reps, that's when you up the weight to send you back down, and you simply rinse and repeat that process. But this only works if you're training in close proximity to failure, like 1 to 3 reps in reserve on most sets, and you don't need to do crazy volume here either. I see people doing like 30 sets per muscle group per week, and if you're training to failure, that's very much dependent here. How accurate you train will dictate the number of sets you need. The more accurate you are, the lower the number of sets you'll need to train. Because if you're not training anywhere near failure, yeah, you might be able to get away with 30 sets per week. But if you're super accurate and you're training to failure, 30 sets per week is insane. So a general recommendation for most people, you want about 8 to all the way up to potentially 20 quality sets per muscle group per week, depending on the muscle group and also how you respond to that volume. And that is plenty if you're actually training hard. And I would honestly start on the lower end. So let's say 8 to 10 sets per muscle group per week, assess your progression, and then increase from there. Step 3, train hard, but recover harder. So we know training in the gym, effective training, that's providing the stimulus. Nutrition provides the raw materials, but arguably the most important piece of this puzzle that we need to complete is recovery, because this is where actual growth occurs. Training you can think of just as the signal. You're creating that stimulus, but you grow when you're resting, when you're outside of the gym, when you're sleeping, managing your stress. And I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial, but I genuinely believe, and I think I've spoken on this before, you're likely not overtrained. You're more likely to be under-recovered. Like 99% of the time, when people think they're overtrained, they're actually just not sleep enough. They're stressed out of their mind. Their nutrition is not on point by any means. A bunch of micronutrient deficiencies. They're doing a bunch of extra cardio because they're scared of getting fat. So fix those things. And I've seen this time and time again. And suddenly your overtraining kind of goes away. It disappears. It's not a training problem. It's a recovery problem. So first and foremost, we got to prioritize our sleep. 7 to 9 hours minimum. Ideally, you're getting closer to 8 or 9 if your schedule allows. I get that's not possible for everybody, but you can still make the most out of those 7 to 8 hours by optimizing your sleep environment and sleep habits. Then, of course, we could look at managing stress. I know easier said than done. Life is always stressful. Work is stressful. Relationships are stressful, whatever. But we can find ways to down-regulate your nervous system, and just implementing super simple things into your day that don't involve a huge time investment, like 10 minutes of meditation in the morning. You can get up 10 minutes earlier to meditate in the morning. Pretty simple. I know it sounds a bit like, what do you want, Oscar? But the data is pretty damn solid on this. Walks in nature, you're already getting your steps on. Just go outside and do them. Works great for reducing cortisol, inducing parasympathetic tone. You could do 2 minutes of guided breath work throughout your day, like 2 to 4 times per day. My favorite thing to do is use the app called State. I'll do 2 minutes guided breath work before every one of my meals. So not only is it putting me in a parasympathetic state 4 times per day, but I'm also getting into a rest and digest state before I eat so I can optimize my food a little bit better. And chronic stress is not conducive to your gains. So I like to think of yourself like a battery, right? Anything sympathetically driven is just going to drain that battery. And then the parasympathetic stuff that we can do, like the 10 minutes of meditation in the morning, like the State app doing guided breath work, that's going to fill up that battery. So if you're consistently in this state where you're sympathetically driven, that battery is just emptying at quite a rapid rate, And if you're doing nothing to bump it up on the parasympathetic side, you're going to run pretty flat pretty quick. And that manifests itself in burnout, terrible recovery, feeling like crap all the time, not progressing your training, stalled muscle gain. So I don't want to throw too much at you, but very basic stuff, like I said, doing would be super solid to implement. Step 4, the mental side of bulking. Honestly, I think this is probably one of the hardest parts of bulking for the majority of people, even myself. It's not so much the training, it's not even the eating, it's the mental aspect. And I don't think this is talked about enough, especially in this day and age when you're constantly bombarded with, like, you open up Instagram, just boom, top 1%, 0.00 genetics, shredded all the time. And that makes it super easy to say you start bulk, your first month, you're going to be feeling awesome. You'll be eating more food, training's going well, you're getting stronger, pumps are great, you're feeling full. You look in the mirror and you can actually see yourself getting bigger, you're buzzing. Then around week, let's say 8, 9, 10, you're going to have a moment. You'll look in the mirror after, let's say, a big meal. You'll feel a tiny bit bloated. Your abs will be slightly less visible than they were before. And you'll think, I'm getting fat because your perception is so warped. And you'll think, I need to stop the bulk right now, need to cut. And this is the critical moment. This is where most people get stuck in that cycle that leads them to have been training for, let's say, 3+ years, but they don't look like they even train. And this feeling is completely normal. Shit, I deal with it, but it's also a combination of factors at play. Not necessarily all body fat. Like I said, if you're following such a small rate of gain, if you're assessing your progress photos week to week, you're not going to be putting on realistically that much body fat. And the good news is, losing body fat is a super boring and easy process, and it doesn't take a long time to do so. So understanding, 1, body fat is temporary, and 2, if you start lean, it'll be a while before you're actually quote unquote fat. So then there's the other side to it of glycogen filling up in your muscles. You got water retention from the increased carbohydrates. So you're going to look softer because your muscles are actually full, not because you gain loads of body fat in, let's say, 8 to 10 weeks, especially, like I said, if you're sticking to that rate of gain we set out. I had a client the other day, we'll call him Tom, messaged me about 2 months into his bulk saying, Oscar, I think I'm getting fat. I need to cut. I'm looking a bit fluffy. And I looked at his progress photos. He'd gained about 8 pounds. His shoulders had visibly grown. You could see his back was getting thicker. His arms were bigger. And yeah, he lost a tiny bit of ab definition. But I told him, look, man, you look significantly better than you did just 2 months ago. Like, you actually look like you train now. If you cut now, you'll just end up back where you started with nothing to show for it. So he stuck with it. 6 months later, he gained about 15 pounds. We did a proper 3-month cut because that's all it took. Nice little 12 weeks in and out. And the transformation was absolutely insane. He looked like a completely different person. He messaged me towards the back end of his diet saying, I'm so glad I didn't quit at the 2-month mark into my bulk, because that would have been the biggest mistake of my life. Not that drastic in my opinion, but goes to show you need to stick through that part where your mind starts playing games on you, telling you need to cut, chasing that obsession of being lean, because the reality is body fat is temporary and you will not be putting much on throughout the process. Now here's a big point I want to make. A proper growth phase is 16 to 20 weeks at a minimum. So not 6 weeks, not I'll bulk until I feel a bit fluffy and then cut again. You actually need to commit to an actual timeline. You need to give your body time to adapt. The worst thing you could do is bulk up for like 4 to 6 weeks, gain a tiny bit of weight, freak out because you don't have abs anymore because you didn't stick to the rate of gain and you were inaccurate and you were eating out during that bulk, and then immediately cut for 8 weeks, lose whatever muscle you may have put on, plus a bit more, and then you're right back where you started. And this is an endless cycle of getting nowhere. So overall theme here, you need to actually give your body time to actually adapt and build muscle tissue. And remember, building muscle is a slow process. It is not like a fat loss phase where you can see changes week to week in your physique. It's exciting seeing your scale go down every few days, but in a bulk, you will likely not see dramatic changes for the first 8 to 10 weeks, but that doesn't mean nothing is happening. That's where you transfer your focus towards training performance in the gym, progressing your lifts, getting strong, and just taking the boxes day to day. So after you finish this video, you can click the first link in the description to calculate your calories. It'll give you your exact macros for your bulk, along with a grocery list and meal plan. Then pick a solid training program. The link in the description will also give you 2 options, a 4 times per week or a 5 times per week option, and commit to it for at least the next 16 weeks minimum. Log every single workout, focus on progressive overload, apply the double progression model, get stronger week after week, prioritize your recovery, your sleep most importantly. So go to bed, wake up at the same time, manage your stress however best you can, and then this is the most important part, commit to doing this for at least 16 Ideally 20 weeks. Don't quit at week 8 or 9 when you start to feel a bit softer. Don't panic when your abs get a little less visible. Trust the process and give your body time to actually build muscle. And remember, losing body fat is a ridiculously easy and boring process. Whatever body fat you're going to gain, you can easily lose. It's only temporary. And if you're interested in recomping, which is also an approach you could take, click this video here.